as you're going through life, did you ever wonder who someone was? Did you ever ask the question, is that really who they are? Where do you find wonder in your life? When do you wonder about people? Or say that about what just happened? I wonder what just happened. What did we miss? Today we're going to look at several miracles Jesus did as recorded in Mark chapter 4, verses 35 through chapter 5, verse 43. And during this time, and as the disciples were watching and listening to each other, I can just hear them say, as they see the miracles, who is this man? Who is this Jesus that we're with? I'm going to start by reading a chorus by the organization To Walk in the Way, entitled, Who is this man? Who is this man who stands and speaks, who speaks as if by his word the worlds were held together? This man whose call commands the elements. This man who orders peace. This man whose word calls forth life and wholeness. Who is this man? Thick fingers, creased and calloused, rasp and chisel, gripped hard to shape the timbers of his trade, carpenter, bunched to muscles rippling around beneath his tunic, builder, wrenched from his bench to shape a new kingdom, with carpenter as king. Who is this man? Who is this man driven into the desert, driven, fighting sand, driven dry, stinging, burning sun, thirsty days stretched across the dragging sunsets, 40 days burning dry, agony, driven into conflict, across the landscape of his spirit, every breath of victory near smothered by the tempter's wile, reaching into each human desire to find the hook of bondage, driven wild across the battleground of the soul and purpose, until the final triumph of spirit over flesh. Who is this man who strikes down Lucifer with a holy word, 3 times uttered in the blaze of clashing wills, who says to his underlings, demons, out! You may no longer live in human habitation. Who is this man who commands the unclean spirits? Silence. You may not speak. You must keep my secret that I am whom you know me to be, Son of God. Silence. You may not tell this secret. Who is this man? God-man, man-God, touching earth with spirit, breathing heaven into clods, whose very word becomes flesh, whose touching breath, word grows into seeing, into sound, and into leaping limbs, whose life gives birth to a new community. God-man, man-God, touching earth with spirit, breathing heaven into clods, shaped by his hand from clay. Who is this man who announces simply, the kingdom of God has now arrived? Who says, it is here, I am bringing it? Who is this man? The question the disciples were saying and asking each other is the same question that we need to ask about Jesus. Who is this man? And how we answer that question makes all the difference in the world. The first miracle I'd like to read is recorded in Mark 4, verses 35 through 41. On that day, when evening had come, he told them, let's cross over to the other side of the sea. So they left the crowd and took him along, since he was in the boat. And other boats were with him. A great windstorm arose, and the waves were breaking over the boat so that the boat was already being swamped. And he was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. So they woke him up and said, "Teacher, don't you care? We're going to die." He got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the sea, "Silence, be still." The wind ceased, and there was a great calm. Then he said to them, "Why are you afraid? Do you still have no faith?" And they were terrified, and they asked one another, "Who then is this? Even the wind and the sea obey him." The disciples found themselves in a desperate situation with nature. They're out in the boat and a windstorm comes up and the boat's rocking and they're scared that the waves are going to crash over the sides of the boat. They're going to be swamped. Their leader, their rabbi, their teacher, the one who they followed, seems unconcerned. He's lying asleep in the boat. Doesn't seem to have a care in the world. And as the song says, "Carest thou not if we perish? How canst thou lie asleep?" In the midst of the storm, Jesus was sleeping. Jesus simply gets up when they wake him, and he speaks to the sea, and the storm is calmed. Mark records that the disciples are no longer terrified about the storm, but suddenly their terror is about Jesus. Who is this man that they're with? This man who can speak to the winds and the wave. Say, "Be still." And they listen. Some of these disciples are seasoned fishermen. They've been out on the sea before. They've seen these storms before. And they never pass that quickly. Who is this man? Who is Jesus? That even the winds, the waves obey him. We may be in the middle of many different storms in our lives, each of us in the midst of something that has come up, something so very unexpected. We could be in Michigan, where there was so much rain that the dams broke, causing everything we owned to be flooded. The world is still trying to discern how to work with coronavirus. And we're in the midst of that, trying to figure out how to make it work. And maybe we wonder why Jesus doesn't wake up, why Jesus doesn't stand up in the boat and just speak and say, "Virus, be still, be gone." We try and find ways to be safe, and there's still work that needs to be done. We try and figure out how to open stores in a safe way. We try to figure out how to have children's activities, whether to have them in the church, in the daycares, in the schools. How do we do that? We try and figure out how to open churches. How do we have church and be safe? How do we open restaurants, get those people back to work, and yet do it in a way that this silent, sightless virus that can make us sick, and we're protected from it? We're trying to figure out how to get athletes back in action. This entertainment business that generates thousands of jobs, lots of revenue. How can we get it back? This week especially, I've received several emails about how to get a softball league up and running. Why can't we do this? Why just we can't go out and play? Why won't they allow it? We need to do something. We're restless. When is Jesus going to stand up and speak like he did to the winds and the waves and say, "Peace, be still. If he can control that part of nature, can he also control other parts of nature as well? Who is this man? The next account in Mark, in the beginning of chapter 5, deals with a man who's possessed by a demon that's so strong that no one can control him. They try binding him, they try manhandling him, and he's just so strong that he breaks it all and he runs. He runs wild in the tombs. And when Jesus shows up, the man comes running to Jesus. And interestingly enough, even though the disciples cannot figure out who Jesus is, even though we just left at the end of chapter 4, wondering who is this man, the man in the tombs, the demons, know exactly who he is. And they come up and they said, "What do you want with us, Jesus, Son of the Most High God?" They know who Jesus is. And they want no part with him. They want nothing to do with him. So Jesus casts the demon out of the man, sends him into a herd of pigs, and all the herd of pigs run into the sea. And the townspeople hear about this. They hear about the pigs that they lost, and they come out to try and figure out what in the world's going on. Somehow talking to the man and putting pieces together, they figure out it was Jesus. And they said, "I don't know who you are." And this is me speaking for them. But if that's what you can do, and seeing what you did, and seeing this man who's here in his right mind, Jesus, we'd rather if you just leave. Could you go away? You're too scary for us. We don't know who you are. Could you leave? Who is this man? Mark changes the scene again. And a synagogue ruler comes to Jesus to ask him to come to his home and heal his daughter who's laying there sick. But in the midst of that story, Mark slides in another story. And the story is about another woman who tries to sneak in and sneak away from Jesus without being noticed. She knows about Jesus, and she thinks that Jesus is a hope for her. But she really doesn't want the attention. Maybe he would just heal me. We read about this account in Mark chapter 5, verses 25 through 34. Now, a woman was suffering from bleeding for 12 years, had endured much under many doctors. She had spent everything she had and was not helped at all. On the contrary, she became worse. Having heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd, touched his clothing, for she said, "If I just touch his clothes, I'll be made well." Instantly her flow of blood ceased, and she sensed in her body that she was healed from her affliction. Immediately, Jesus realized that power had gone out from him. And he turned around in the crowd and he said, "Who touched my clothes?" His disciples said to him, "You see the crowd pressing against you, and yet you say, 'Who touched me?'" But he was looking around to see who had done this. The woman, with fear and trembling, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell down before him and told him the whole truth. "Daughter," he said to her, "your faith has saved you. Go in peace and be healed from your affliction." This woman was pushed away by society. She should not have even been close to that crowd, because she was declared by definition of her illness to be unclean. And anyone and anything that she touched would also become unclean. So she had to sneak her way through the crowd to try and touch Jesus. Anyone that she touched on that way was now officially unclean. She had been cheated by several doctors. They tried to help, but she just kept getting worse. But somehow, if you would ask her who Jesus was, who this man was, she would have responded that he's someone I believe could help me. And I'm willing to risk the scorn of the crowd. I'm willing to have people just spread away to get close enough to him to find out. Because the people would have spread away had they known who she was. Because they would not have wanted to become unclean. This man, Jesus, senses what has happened. And he stops and asks the woman to identify herself. Now, this would mean that Jesus would acknowledge that he was unclean because an unclean woman had touched him. And this would also mean that the woman would have to admit that she moved through the crowd, most likely touching many other people, and would be scorned even more for doing so. Yet Jesus calls her out. Disciples say, Jesus, this is useless. You're in a crowd, there's people all around you, people are touching you all of the time. What do you mean? Who touched me? But when the woman comes and admits to Jesus that she touched her, she touched him, Jesus affirms her faith. Jesus assures her healing. And Jesus sends her away in peace. And I can just imagine disciples looking at each other and asking each other, who is this man? Why did he take time for her? He can heal others by simply touching. Can he heal others by them simply touching him? And why did he take the time to address this unclean woman? Who is this man? The fourth miracle, which is wrapped around the healing of the woman in the text, is a religious leader, a leader of the synagogue that has a sick daughter. And he believes that Jesus can heal her. So he invites Jesus to his house. Come to my house. But on the way, all hope disappears. And the people come to Jairus, the ruler, and say, don't bother the teacher anymore. Jesus is no longer useful. Jesus can no longer help us. Where we believed before that he could help us, he no longer can help us. The damage has been done. The child has died. And Jesus looks at Jairus, and he continues anyway. And he says, the child's asleep. And those who are mourning the death of the child start laughing at him. Are you delusional? Are you crazy? What do you mean the child's asleep? Who is this man, Jesus, that doesn't even understand death? Yet in the midst of that, Jesus gives life. He raises and heals the girl. Just who is this man that can even bring life to the dead? And if this Jesus, who can bring life to a dead girl, can this same Jesus bring life to places in my life that are dead? And does that same Jesus want to come in to the room in my house and bring life? Am I willing to let him in, or do I just want to send him away? Do I want to say, Jesus, it's too late? There's no hope for the death that's there. Not even you, Jesus, can take care of that. So how do we answer the question, who is this man? Is he someone we turn to when we are in our deepest trouble? Is he someone we're not sure about? Because even the wildest nature is subject to him. Is he someone we want to stay away from because we're afraid of what he'll ask us to do? Is he someone we want to go away because we've seen what he can do? And we're really not sure that we want him in our town. Who is this man? Is he someone we seek out to help us, but we really hope that it can happen unnoticed because we don't want everyone else seeing what we really need and the trouble that we're really in? So, Jesus, can I just sneak in and touch the hem of your garment and you take care of it and then I slide away? Is Jesus someone we laugh at because he doesn't know what he's talking about? Is he someone we try and send away because the situation has gotten so bad that he can no longer be useful? How are each one of us going to answer that question today? Who is this man? Are we afraid? Are we ready to send him away? Or like the woman, are we ready to bow down and worship? Only you can answer that question. Only I can answer the question, who is this man? And how you answer that question will change your life.